Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to our Q&A live session here on Fundraising Chat, or sorry, not Fundraising Chat, Trust Fundraising Hub. I'm Deanna Wolf, the Senior Consultant for Trust Fundraising here at Money Tree Fundraising. We come to you live the third Thursday of every month at 12:15 to answer your Trust Fundraising questions. A few questions have come up through the month. Do feel free at the bottom of the session here to post your questions. I will get them. So do feel free to do so if you have any today. And I just want to say welcome, and I hope you've all had a good holiday. We had a number of questions and a number of groups of questions that have come up over the course of the last month. So I just want to cover those with us today. The first one is, does anyone have any recent success rates for cold approaches? And the requester, Melissa Davis, is still asking if it's 1 in 12. I would say it's probably much higher than 1 in 12. Its numbers haven't really gone down since the pandemic, and so cold approaches can still be really, really tough. Getting a benchmarked number generally is a little bit of a wet finger in the wind kind of idea, or wet finger in the air kind of idea to see which way the wind is blowing. It's been really hard to get that information. I know Lark Owl does try and get some of that out, but benchmarking has been hard, partially because fundraisers aren't responding, partially because we don't always know to the responding to the requests, partially because we don't always know what's going on with them, and not everyone's responding, and not a wide enough circle. I would say right now, err on the side of caution. So 1 in 12 is probably closer to what it was pre-pandemic, when competition wasn't quite as high, and when the internet and when the resources were much higher, and when people weren't applying willy-nilly, because I think there's still a lot of cold approaches that are going in that are probably not targeted as well as they should be. I would, if you're going to be cautious, I would say probably 1 in 15, 1 in 20, 1 in 15 being the really, really low end for cold approaches. If you're targeting really well, you're not quite a full cold approach, because you've targeted, you're matching what you're doing and making sure that it's matching what is being asked for and the interest areas of the funder. So I would probably go 1 in 20 as a good, nice, safe area to go in. If you can get your cold approaches down to 1 in 12, that's really good. That means you're targeting really, really well, and you've got a really good application that you're putting in. Another question was subscribing to Trust and Foundation's database, which is the best one to sign up to, and that was Sarah Jarman. And please excuse me if I get your first name incorrectly, if I say it incorrectly. Koirul Alam was also asking about grants online. Now, I'm not going to mention anyone in particular. What I would say, which is the best Trust and Foundations directory, I would go into it, the way I look at things is, how do you choose a directory? And one of the best ways to do it is to find out, what do you need it to do? What sector are you in within Trust and within the charity sector? What are you asking it for? Where are you located? Because some of them are better in some areas and some of them are not as good in other areas. I know we've had a lot of discussions both on Trust Fundraising Hub, and prior to that, there was an awful lot, but prior to Trust Fundraising Hub, there were a lot of discussions about it in fundraising chat, which are both fundraising special interest groups on and private special interest groups on Facebook. I would say find out what you want it to do, the area that you're working in, and how you want it to work for you. What kind of information are you looking at? I'd also have a good look at your budget and how long you're going to be using that information for. I will often, in my own practice, I will often use some of the databases as my first go. That's my first, where I'm getting the grand list of funders that I'm looking for, with the view that I then go and check their website specifically, because even though the databases are often up to date, they're not always, there's thousands of trusts out there, so they don't always catch everything immediately. So I check the funder's own database, and I do an awful lot of my own searches using the Charity Commission, or in my case up here in Scotland, it's OSCAR, so the Office of the Scottish Charity Regulator, and I double check the information there and the information on their records, the charity's record there, You can do advanced searches on them, which actually can pull you up quite a good number of long listed options. If you're using Grants Online or you're using Funds Online or Grin or any of the ones that are out there, a lot of them will give you an initial sample that you can either look through to find out whether you like it or not, whether you like the search method. You can sometimes have access. I know a couple of them will give you access for a month or for a week to see whether you like it or not. Some of the ones where the database itself is not great, they send out a weekly or a daily newsletter. And sometimes the newsletters are the best place to get the information that you're looking for. Those come up. I've got a couple of subscriptions here at Moneytree for those. And I have to say they're invaluable. And I've been able to find new funds that are coming up. And it's new fund opportunities rather than new trusts and new foundations that are coming up that are useful. Have a good list of criteria, know how much you want to spend, and then see if you can get a trial and then make a decision based on that. It can be a year's subscription that you have. So you want to make sure that you've tried it out well before you get a chance before you have to pay the money and find out that it's not quite what you wanted to. If you know someone who has a database that you are thinking of accessing, see if you can piggyback on them. It's always the funders themselves or the trust databases don't always like it when you do that, but see if you can do a sample search and see if it's getting the kind of results that you're looking for. Don't take the mickey and try and do all your researching using someone else's subscription. But the other thing you can do is check your local libraries. I know at one point a lot of libraries had access to trustfundraising.org.uk, which is the precursor to what is Funds Online now. You had to go in and use it. It was often in the business development and business section of the library. You had to have a library card to use the library and you had to book the time, but often it was free access. And so it's worth seeing if your library has access to any of these and go and try it out there and see if you can access it. It may mean that you don't need the subscription if you can use it that way. Another question was setting budgets for 23-24. Are you looking to drop your expected income from grants and trusts in the next financial year? And that's coming from Jess Gray. I would adjust any of your predictions based on the fact that competition is probably the highest I've seen it in 20 years. And I've been doing this in the UK for 20 years, a couple of years before that in North America. It's tough. It's very tough out there right now because guidelines are changing. Some trusts are going away. I did a quick search the other day for one of my associates, and you can do a search on Charity Commission to find out what are the removed charities. There were over 300 that were removed last year. Some of them really big, some of them ones that we've used before and I've accessed before. Some of them that are giving out six-figure gifts every year or six-figure total amounts. There's a lot that's changing in the landscape. I would possibly be very cautious in what your expected income is this year. There are some that may say they are looking to change their guidelines, or they'll give you funding, but then circumstances change for them, and so they have to withdraw their funding or withdraw any pledges they have. Be careful if you've got other income streams, see if they can help shoulder some of the impact. Trusts and foundations have the longest time between when you actually submit your application to when you get an answer. If you play the deadline game really well and you can get your application in just before a deadline, you know that a decision is going to be made quite quickly, and you can sometimes find out within a couple of weeks or a couple of months. But chances are for any sizable gifts, you could probably wait a good 3 to 4 months, if not much longer. I know there was a couple of funders where their application period from first application to if you get an award can be 18 months. And that includes some of the bigger lottery grants. They take longer than is expected. Even the awards for all, sometimes it's a short turnaround if you're in an area where they're able to do that. Sometimes it can take months and months and months because they are dealing with the same staff shortages and issues that all of our charities are and all of the organizations are. So I would be cautious about what your planned income is, and know that you're going to have to submit an awful lot more applications. If you're in a one trust fundraiser organization, keep in mind how much time you have to submit applications. If you don't have a lot of extra time, given the fact that you may have to put in more applications to more funders, your incomes potentially could drop just because there's only one of you and your job is not to work yourself into the ground. So keep in mind, with all of the work that's going on and the volume that's going to have to go out, that you may have to keep your own resilience and your own health and mental health and capabilities and well-being in mind. So pace yourselves if you can. Excuse me. Julia Krepska had a question a few times on applications, which was, how much are you contributing from your own resources? That is usually following the questions about total budget and how much you've secured so far from other sources. And she's asking, what do you usually put in there? If you've got money, I'd put money in. If you've got some unrestricted money that you can use towards the project, and I would have a good conversation with your finance manager. But if you've got some unrestricted availability of budgets that you can use as we've already secured, I would see if your organization can put that money towards it. Keep fundraising, see if you can replace it. It's money that's been put forth. You can always replace it at the end if you bring in more money. And it just means that the project means a lot to you. And that's really what that question's asking for. It's a number question, but they're really also asking, is this an important project for you? Are you as an organization willing to put your money where your mouth is? If you're expecting everyone else to pay for your important projects, but you're not willing to contribute anything, be that in kind, and I don't mean staff time, but I mean in kind, like resources, or you've got the availability to bring in extra materials, or you've got someone who's going to be contributing specialist. They're a specialist and they're bringing in their specialism, and they normally charge for it elsewhere. I would add those things in. But if you can, and you know that your organization can put forth a small amount towards it, even if and I don't mean like 1%, I mean like a gift that's an obvious thing, maybe 5% or 10% of the amount, and then you can bring it in from your own resources, even if it's on a temporary basis, with the view that in the long run, you're going to be replacing that money with trust fundraise or money that you've fundraised from another income source, either trust funds or another income stream. And that's what they're looking for, is they want to know that you're committed to the project, that you're willing to put the money that you've earned or that you've found for other things or for general into this project. So if you can do it, I would do it that way. We're also getting, now if you've got any questions, please do put them in the boxes below the recording, and we can definitely put things on there. We're also there's people looking for how long and what's involved in going from a small ask and when the organization's generally been asking for funding up to about 20,000, and now they're being asked to put in and scout out the resource required to put in applications for up to 150, 300,000, and what's involved in that. One of the things that's involved is, do you need that money? If you don't need 150,000 because you don't really have a project for it, you just kind of want, an extra 150,000 would be great in our budget. Yes, 150,000 would probably be great in most people's budgets. But if you don't have an actual need for it, you're going to have a hard time convincing a trust to give it to you, unless you've got a really, really, really long and really good and strong relationship with them, and they understand why you want to have that money. Maybe it's growth, maybe it is taking you to the next level, and that there's a strategic reason why you have it. Otherwise, there's an awful lot of charities out there that are dealing with people on the front line of not having money, not having heat, not being able to pay their bills, not having food, not potentially be going homeless. And that's where I think a lot of the focus is on. So if you want extra money, you need to know that you need it, and that it matches the budget that you have for the project that you're going for from it. The other thing I would say is, do you have the ability to manage that money? Do you have the staff that can manage it? If you are a one person fundraising shop or one person trust fundraising shop, do you have the ability to add in an extra day a quarter to do the reporting and to do the chasing internally to find that information that you need for it? Are you going to be able to monitor it on a regular basis? Is there a monitoring plan in place? Are you set up in such a way that you can do the monitoring for it? If you can't, then that needs to get in place first. It could be that you're planning to put it in once you get the application in, and you're using this grant as a way to get a monitoring and evaluation program into place. And that's great, but just make sure you do it. Keep in mind that some of the really big ones, including some of the statutory grants and the lottery grants, can require quite significant reporting to them. So it's not one day a month. When I was working with one employer, we had a quarterly report that was easily 3 to 5 pages long for each, plus financial narrative for each of 4 or 5 grant programs. And it took 2 weeks a quarter for me to get everything in and to chase all the information down. And that wasn't me slacking. That was me just working along and getting all the information together. They were involved. They were in very involved reporting that needed, and report forms that needed filling in. So it's important to make sure that you've got that resource internally to be able to do that. If you don't, can you get it? And are you going to get it? If it's probable that you're not going to get it until you've got the funding in, where's the payment going to come for it? Who's going to give up what aspects of their job so that they can do that as well? And then it's a matter of, do you have the staffing? Do you have the facilities? Can you put something like that in place? So it's not just about going for a grant of 150,000. It's, do you have all the backup materials and internal capacity and resource to take on the extra work that that's going to give you, as well as making sure that you've got the service delivery and project staff in place or can get it. If you're going to do it, keep in mind timescales, and that recruiting can sometimes be really, really long and really, really hard right now. It's not that there aren't people who aren't looking for jobs. It's that people have changed what they're looking for in their jobs and what they're expecting from their employers. It also may be that you have to make sure you're very competitive in what you're paying them. There's an awful lot of jobs out there that aren't competitive, and people can't afford to work at them because it will cost them money to go to that employer and work at that employer rather than getting the money they need to pay their own bills, and which is essentially why they're at work. I hope that helps a little bit. I also had one recently, and this has come up quite a lot in the various fundraising chat boards that I'm on. When people ask for one specific thing, they're looking for a piece of furniture or a salary, and they want to know which funders can go for them. We're a really generous lot as trust fundraisers, but keep in mind that a lot of us are in competition with you. So if you put in an application, we're putting in an application. We may not give you that information until after we know that our funding round has completed, because we don't want extra funding, competition in there. And it sounds really terrible that that's the case, but it's actually true. We're all in competition with each other. We're friendly. We're suggestive, or not suggestive. We provide suggestions. We're helpful when we can do it. We give recommendations. But I would rather teach you how to fish than give you the fish itself, because it's going to help you in the long run. When you're looking for a particular line item, especially if you're brand new to trust fundraising, when you're looking for a particular line item, it's often hard to find a funder who will give you that line item in particular. What the funders are looking for is to fund a change for your beneficiaries. They're looking for improvements. They're looking for an impact or an outcome. So you want to make sure that you can find out, what is that item going to, what is that salary and the work that person does? How is that going to impact your beneficiaries? or your cause, whether that's your individuals, animals, policy, the ecology and plants and ecosystems and things like that. You want to make sure what's the impact that that's going to have, and you want to frame any application you do around the impact rather than around the item. The item is just a way to get to that impact. But you also want to do your research based on what that impact is. So you're not looking for beds. You're looking for things for people who are homeless or who are in poverty, or there's illness in a family and they use specific beds. So you're looking to help that family have a better life and a better quality of life and potentially get better, and move to a next stage. And so it's about the impact. So you're not going to find somebody who funds beds easily. You are going to find somebody potentially who can fund equipment, but that is, I would look in the broader side of things first, get a list of funders that can list that broader side of things. So if you're looking for beds, you're looking for potentially health or homelessness or poverty, find those bigger categories that you want to look at, and then go through and see what exclusions they have and where they fund, and start narrowing it down, because it's not the item that they're funding. Although the money that they're going to give you will fund that item, what they're funding is the transition or the change or the improvement and the outcome and the impact for the beneficiary that you're working with. And so it's just a cost of the project or the service that you're trying to do. It's a lot easier for them to understand why, and often funders will give on the why, not necessarily the what. The what is what the money pays for, but the why is the reason that you're getting the money. So you want to make sure that you've got that why really, really clear. I hope that helps. And are there any other questions? It's looking like there's not very many. Let me just double check Facebook and see if anything has come up. Nope. I would say as well, budgets. That's something else that's been coming up, is budgets. Budgets are hard this year, very much so. It's not just about what are you bringing in, but when you're costing things, inflation rates are going up and down. There's still probably quite a lot of volatility. So the funders, the trusts, they get their funding, as many of us know, and if you're brand new, this is new, they get their money from the interest off of their capital. And their capital is often invested in the markets, the financial markets, or it's potentially coming from rents and other financial vehicles. That's going up and down. If people aren't paying rents, they don't have rent to pay to give you funding because they don't have funding to give out. So you want to make sure that that's where the funding's coming from, which is why I'm saying be cautious on your success rates and the volume of work you've got to put out. But also, when you're doing a budget up for a project, especially if it's a multi-year project, I would go in, and I know I'm not a financial advisor, but I have seen everything from 3% to 9% to 11% interest, or of inflation and it depends on the industry you're in for the costs of things. So I would add on the I would probably go a slightly lower, so I wouldn't go much below 9% on your interest rates or for your inflation increases, but I would also add a healthy contingency into any budget. And if you're doing a capital budget, that's going to be tough. We have had reports from some of our clients who were doing some work, and they were saying that the cost of steel has went up by £900 a unit overnight, one day. And that was just for one unit, and they needed multiple units. So it's going up incredibly high, and that market is volatile, partially because of what's available as a resource generally, partially because of what's available coming into Britain. The logistics issues around Brexit are still in existence. The logistics issues to do with things coming from China are still in existence because of their own health crisis and their own issues with COVID. That's still in play. We've also got our markets going up and down, and so that's interesting. And we've got any of the impact of what's going on in the Ukraine and the war there, and the impact on logistics and transport and resourcing that's happening. So there's an awful lot happening in the world. Some things are getting better, a lot of things are getting worse, not just the cost of living. So when you're doing budgets, make sure you've got them and that you're doing things that are nice and healthy. And I think that's probably it. We don't seem to have any other questions today. So I'm going to leave this here today. We're just a little bit short of half an hour. We're normally half an hour long. What I'd like to say is that our next meeting and our next session is going to be on February 16th at 12:15. And please do put questions in either this session if we don't answer them, if we haven't answered them today, or you haven't had a chance, please do get in touch. Post your question in Trust Fundraising Hub, either on Twitter or on Facebook. I tend to respond on the Facebook ones. My colleagues will potentially monitor Twitter and our LinkedIn page a little bit more closely than I do. But please do keep in touch with us. We can answer the questions. And if I don't know the answers, then I know we have a very large, there's well over 3,000 people in the Trust Fundraising Hub now. Someone's going to have an answer for you. So I hope you have a good day. And this session has been recorded. So if you haven't had a chance, or you've come in late, or you had to leave early, it's going to be posted very shortly on our LinkedIn page, which is the Money Tree Fundraising page, and on the Trust Fundraising Hub, both on Twitter and on Facebook. I hope you have a good week and a good month, and I'll see you on the 16th. Bye-bye now.